Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. So let's go over the best tier list for season 27, going over what class is going to be the best class to actually select. So starting right off, I want to go ahead and provide you guys with the info. This is going to be an updated one because they have actually changed some of the builds from the most recent PTR notes. So starting right off, these are the current leaderboards for the classes. So in terms of like what is going to be the highest GR push, this is kind of what's going to be the main focus of the video in terms of like how we are determining which class is at what tier for my personal take, as well as like, I mean, it's kind of factual. If one class can do GR 150 and the other class is significantly far behind, well, it's just not going to be nearly as high in the tier list. But there are going to be some exceptions to this rule, which are going to be with the Crusader and the Witch Doctor, but I'll get into that in a second. So pretty much the only class that has not at least had one player clear a GR 150 is actually going to be the Wizard. But don't let that discourage you from playing any of the builds that I'm going to be showing off in the video, as every single build can do like GR 100s really easily. But that day and age, most likely you want to try to go a little bit higher than that to get those augments up and get those gem levels. So starting right off, let's go ahead and start off with the Wizard. So the Wizard actually has a few different things to play around with. Specifically, Firebirds is going to be the best. You guys are seeing the gameplay here in the background, but it did take a really big nerf with the second round of the PTR changes. The Fireball that you're shooting with magic missile, it got cut in half. It used to be 20, now it's 10, so that's a huge nerf. They did also technically buff up Mirror Ball, but you don't run Mirror Ball for this because you're just using the Firebird set to actually get the damage. I would put Wizard in the B tier, and the other reason why I'm also putting it in here is because the other really good build, which is actually the DMO Frozen Orbit build. This build over here actually has some issues with the amount of things that you need to activate at the correct time. So going over the gameplay as well, and it's difficult to play this build because you have your Arcane Dynamo, which you want to activate. You have Triumvirate, which you need to activate. You also want to get all of these new Sanctified orbs surrounding you. Then you also have to wait for your Convention of Elements. You also have to have them inside of a time bubble. So the new DMO Frozen Orb Wizard, it's just difficult to play. And that's another reason why I'm considering the Wizard in the B tier, is because not only is it very difficult to play, it's not even like the highest tier of push. It does hit really hard for in terms of damage, but there's so many little ticks that you have to like reach before it actually will be able to deal massive amounts of damage. There technically is also a buff to like Tal Rasha's, but the buff is simply not enough in terms of like the Meteor build. But I'm not here to go over like the best like tier list for every single build, otherwise this video will get way too long. And on top of that, if you guys are wondering, like, you know, for build guides, I will drop that later down the line when they may be released, potentially the final notes, as this is the last update that we're getting in terms of gameplay that we can actually access from the PTR. So this is like basically like the last update that we're getting that we can actually play before it goes live. So in terms of right now, I'd put Wizard over in the B tier for those reasons. The next thing I actually want to cover is the Witch Doctor. The Witch Doctor actually took a massive amount of buffs. So you'll see that the Witch Doctor has cleared many GR 150s, and that's due to the Bogadile. So what it does is it's actually going to be summoning this giant crocodile that comes up and basically one-shots lots of things. We're talking even the Rift Guardian you can potentially one-shot, and I think that that will get nerfed. So if the Witch Doctor does not have that nerf, like basically how it works is you're going to be pulling everything all to one little small target, and you're going to be basically destroying them. You can run Arakiri, you can run Mundanugu, whatever the case that you want. You can run multiple different builds with Witch Doctor to do a GR 150, but I think it's unrealistic to say that Witch Doctor will be consistently one-shotting Rift Guardians when it comes out. So for that reason, if it stays, I will say Witch Doctor is in the S tier. However, it's unrealistic that the Bogadile thing will actually one-shot Rift Guardians. That will probably be changed, so I'm going to keep it safe and put it on the A tier. That's an expected change that I personally think it will actually change. But next up, that's kind of like the main best Witch Doctor build, but there's a couple different pet builds. You can get like extra just flat numerical changes. It's not really super important to show, so that's why I'm going to put it over there. Next up for Necromancer. Necromancer actually has a few different builds that you can actually go on the leaderboards with. So right now I'm going to show you guys the Blood Nova build. This one is really fun to play. Basically, you're getting this giant AoE Nova of Blood Novas. You got these Simulacrums. It's a really fun build. This is done 150. The other build of the Rathma, which is actually the Season Journey, the Haedrig's Gift, that's going to be at the start, and that's another really awesome build. It has been nerfed with the Army of the Dead. It used to be a lot stronger, but I'll show you guys gameplay of it like briefly over here so you guys can see kind of how it works. Basically, you're going to have these spirits just come by and basically destroy things without you really needing to do too much. Now, before you would have these massive armies of skeletons. That has been nerfed, but it's still a really great build. Both builds are viable, and because it's a season starter like set like the Rathma, I got to give it an S tier to the Necromancer. I'll kind of order some of these as well, because I think there is a better choice for like the S tier category in terms of like if you really want to try to do a 150. But Necromancer is looking really solid again with the season start. But the next thing I want to go over is actually going to be the Wave of Light Monk. So the Wave of Light Monk is actually going to be very powerful as well. If you are looking to do a GR 150, I would say this is the most consistent build. However, it's going to be one of the most difficult builds to actually build. This and the LOD Barbarian are going to be builds where I still recommend them. They're great, but they're not going to be something where you can start off with the season and just go right into it immediately. You're going to have to build up to it, as any LOD build will have to. However, with Barbarian and Monk, you need a lot of cooldown reduction in order to get a lot of your things kept up with the uptime, as you can play Stone Gauntlets, and also you need to keep Epiphany up. You need to keep a lot of things up, and just for the build to actually feel good, you need massive amounts of cooldown reduction, so it's going to take time to build these up. For Monk, you do get Ryman at the start, which is actually terrible. So Monk, even though I will consider an S tier, the thing with Monk that I do want to mention is it's an S tier at the later stages of the game, as in like you start off with Ryments, which if you guys want to see gameplay, I will pin in the comments all of the different builds that you can actually mess around with for the new season with all the new angelic powers. But pretty much with Monk, it's no question that this is going to be the best build. However, I really wanted Ulianas to be good. That one and the Ryment are significantly farther behind. So yeah, with Monk, this is the go-to build. Wave of Light, you're going to be using the new angelic power, so you can summon these bells, and then you're going to actually have to deal damage to these bells, and your teammates can actually deal damage to them as well. So it might be kind of interesting to see how that actually plays out. But yeah, Monk definitely going to be in the S tier category. But again, it's going to take a while to build up, just as a heads up. Now with Demon Hunter, there's actually two different builds that are very competitive. We're talking like 140 consistently on the leaderboard. So the #1 spot is actually going to be done with this new Cluster Arrow Angelic Power. The rune that you run is a fire one. It has a very short range. In terms of gameplay, it's difficult to play. However, I do want to mention also that if you don't want to run the fire rune and you're just interested in speeds, there's better options. But it does look pretty cool when you have the new power. If you want to do, cold rune, you can basically off-screen many demons, and this is really cool to play. But the best way to play it is actually with a short rune. It's hard to play, so just keep that in mind as a heads up. But I really want to highlight Impale Strafe. This is probably going to be the build that most people enjoy playing as Demon Hunter. We're talking rifts within 1 to 3 minutes. You can consistently get like GR 100, 120s really easily, and it's fun to play too because you're basically just spitting. It's the Impaled Demon Hunter, but you're able to do it while strafing. That's one of the new angelic powers. There's also a build where you can use multi-shot. Since you do start off with UE, the Unhallowed Essence, you can actually play a multi-shot build really early on and just melt things with this one. It is so much fun to actually play this build where you're just multi-shotting everything. Now, this one isn't the best build for Demon Hunter, but it's a great starter because, again, it's the beginning of the season. In terms of its start is definitely in the S tier. However, it does fall off compared to the other ones in terms of like being able to clear. The Cluster Arrow one is just difficult to play, as a heads up. I'm going to put them in the A tier category because there is better options, but hands down, Demon Hunter has the best season start because, one, you always get something good out of the crafting if you do the Hope of Cain and then you throw in the Kanai's Cube. They have a really good start because with this season, you don't have any powers to access because the brand new Sanctified powers don't even drop until you are max level, which of course, when you're trying to level up as fast as possible, I'll factor that in just a little bit. But for the most part, it is a really fun build and it's great. Next up though, I do want to highlight the Crusader. So the Crusader is kind of in a weird spot. None of the angelic powers are really that amazing. Like this is the hammer build where we're getting the crackles with energy. It's relatively weak. It's very hard to push. Heck, you can get onto the leaderboards with the build with the Seekers of the Light. You could just do like a GR like 100 and you would be on the leaderboards because it's just so underwhelming compared to some of the other classes, as well as what's actually offered. Now, the best build with Crusader, there's a pet build that is kind of cool, and I'll show you guys that real quick as well. So this is like the new Condemned Army Crusader where you're basically commanding a army of archers behind you and you are judging the enemies, and then it's going to shoot them with a arrow, and it's going to condemn those that you have judged. It's a really cool and interesting build. Definitely one of the more unique ways to actually get a new gameplay style out of the new Sanctified powers. However, it's actually not the best build. The best build with Crusader actually relies on the Sanctified power, which I think will be actually nerfed. So how it works is basically, this is a GR 150, by the way, that you guys are seeing. It's difficult to actually, first off, you almost always need a conduit in order for this to actually go through. But what you're doing is you're summoning these angels. These angels will then activate Condemn, and then you need to recast Falling Sword to summon these angels. It was originally with a 60-second cooldown, but they have actually changed it so there's no cooldown on it, but you have to resummon the angels. I like the idea of this, and I think that it's overall in the right direction. However, we're not really using any of these Sanctified powers on the Crusader to actually get these big giant pushes. There's a Fist of the Heavens build as well, but I mean, all it does is activate Fist of the Heavens. It's not like a super insane skill that you're going to be one-shotting everything when you use Fist of the Heavens. I mean, you can rapidly cast it. So that build is like, okay, you can do T16, maybe like speed runs, maybe like GR 100 speed runs. But overall, I think the Barbarian Crusader is probably going to maintain its dominancy. In terms of how it was on leaderboard, every single build was using the angel powers, and that's because it does so much damage. You're seeing, I'm basically a 0 DPS Crusader, but I'm just relying on these angels to actually clear this 150. So it's a lot harder, and there's lots of people that are doing this. And if you guys are thinking, well, this would be S tier, right? You could do 150. It's a Z DPS. It's so hard to do, honestly, and I expect it to be nerfed. Like, if things do not change, I will still not put it in the S tier category. It's really hard to get a 150. I mean, you got to fish for these rifts. You got to make sure it's the right one. You basically have to get a conduit in order for it to get completed. So for that reason, Crusader, if it didn't get changed, I would put it in the A tier. Now, in terms of like realistically how good is the Crusader, if this gets changed, like if they nerf this, which I'm assuming it may be getting nerfed because it's a 0 DPS and you can clear it with basically very little gear in terms of like damage. You don't need it. You can run like Mutilation Guard, you can run Esoteric Alteration, you can run a lot of weird things that aren't even like competitive. People were like on the leaderboards running Ashiras doing 150s. Realistically, I think what's going to happen is this will be changed, and unfortunately with the rest of the Crusader powers, they're not very powerful. I'd say it's probably the weakest class in the next upcoming season, just because the Sanctified powers don't really feel that powerful, with the exception of the angels, which I'm guessing it's going to be nerfed. Again, if it does not get nerfed, it's an A, but more than likely, that's my guess, okay? And then over here, we have the Barbarian. So the Barbarian actually has a lot of cool things to play around with. You have the ability to just get more damage with Wrath of the Berserker when you're getting these like stacks, but you can also play it where you're going to be sucking up everyone with this whirlwind. And what it does is it lets you drag a bunch of enemies, you can get area damage, and you lay down a big hammer, and it's just going to slam and pop everything for trillions of damage. And with that area damage, you can melt things super fast. And yeah, it's a great build. It's fun to play. It's brand new. There's also another build with Hammer of the Ancients where you will be able to actually get this giant shockwave. They made the multiplier times 10, but this is still the best Barbarian build for this next upcoming season, even though there is a Sanctified Hammers of the Ancients like power. You're still running the Whirlwind, because grouping up all those enemies, even if you can hit in multiple directions, doesn't matter, because you're sucking up all of them and you just want to get that big hammer when they're all grouped up, and it's awesome to play. And Barbarians are pretty much always in demand anyways, for those of you guys that do like to do group play, but this tier list isn't about group play, it's just about how high can you actually clear. You do get also, I believe, Wrath of the Wastes for this next upcoming season, so that's a great starter too, because you're going to be able to maybe scale some of your other things. Even though you don't scale Whirlwind, you'll get some pieces of gear, of course, that you can start rolling to get those perfect pieces of gear, because it is an LOD build, if you guys are wondering. But you can still do very fast speeds with the Wrath of the Waste, and that's a great like starter build as well. And for that reason, I'm also going to be putting Barbarian in the S tier category. But that is going to pretty much wrap things up in terms of my tier list. But I also want to mention that there could be some changes that I expect to see Wizard and Crusader getting buffed. Specifically the Wizard with Tal Rashas, with the Tal Meteor. I have some gameplay of it. It's a little bit underwhelming because the way it works is you're just going to have to cast your meteors again and again. There's a few different ways to play the build with the Tal Meteor Wizard. There's a few different builds that you can play. There's one where you basically keep on spamming Meteor, but there's other ones where you just activate activating all of the effects of different elements to actually get those meteors as well. But I think Tal Rasha's needs a buff. Crusader needs a buff in like the angelic department, where Wizard, you have different ways to play. The Storm Armor like GR150 build has actually been nerfed as well. Just want to mention that as a heads up. If you guys want to check out the gameplay though, like anyone could have done this 150. Is the easiest one to actually do, I think maybe of all time. But I'll pin it down below also if you guys want to check it out. And if you guys want to see any of the angelic powers, I cover all of them in like a dedicated video for each class. I don't want to cover them in this video. Otherwise, this video would be a lot longer than necessary. But yeah, there we go. So that is basically all of the tier lists that you know, I wanted to go ahead and go over. But let me know, guys, if you guys think maybe these should be moved up and down. Let me know in the comment section below. What class do you plan on playing on season 27? For me personally, I'm going to start off on DH, and I may move into Wizard depending on what they do with Tal Rasha, because I desperately think that thing needs a buff. But anyways, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here and do want to see more Diablo and other action RPGs and more games in the future, subscribe to the bell. I'll see you on season 27. Take care, guys. Peace.